soul dries up and my heart feels like an empty cup. And when the river of your love can't be found, Lord, turn me around, give me faith and sweet surrender. When my spirit's falling, give me faith and sweet surrender. Oh, hear me calling. When all my courage has abandoned me and my life looks like it's already seen. When I am feeling forsaken, Lord, forgotten on this desolate shore, give me faith and sweet surrender. In my dark hour, give me faith and sweet surrender to the higher power. Faith is the power behind all great work throughout all mankind. Surrender is the way to find serenity and peace of mind. Oh, so when I don't know which way to turn, every day, every night, my soul is yearning. There's a way to keep my spirit high, plant my feet on the ground and let my soul fly. Give me faith and sweet surrender. In my dark hour, give me faith and sweet surrender to the higher power. Give me faith and sweet surrender. When my spirit's falling, give me faith and sweet surrender. Oh, hear me calling, give me faith and sweet surrender. In my dark hour, give me faith and sweet surrender to the higher power. Give me faith and sweet surrender. When my spirit's falling, give me faith and sweet surrender.
Om Satchid Ananda Sharanam. Om Shri Guru Kripahi Kevalam. Om Shri Guru Sharanagato. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Can anybody guess what my topic's going to be this morning? There it is, faith and sweet surrender. How many got it? Got so many high-achieving people in this temple this morning. And I bet those of you at home also guessed. Thank you, Joy Dave, for that wonderful song that gets us started today on a beautiful, have you noticed the beautiful maple leaves that are changing in amongst the green, so they come as such an extraordinary surprise, like a gift? Well, you thought that the most important thing happening today is Tom Brady being here. It's going to be a pretty exciting game. However, there's another game in town. And that is, did you know that last Friday, October 1st, was St. Francis's birthday, St. Francis of Assisi. Yes, and do you know that St. Francis of Assisi is the most popular of all saints in the world, even to non-Catholics? He's just universal. He doesn't belong to any particular denomination. He just, of course, there are a lot of people that just say, you know, I have this wonderful statue in the garden, St. Francis statue, which is kind of like a generic name, but it is St. Francis. And you know how many birthday candles he has on his cake this year? 860. So that takes a mighty, 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 except we don't blow in our tradition. We use a gigantic, gigantic holy magazine of some sort to put the candles out, which makes all sense during a time of COVID and all sense during a time of, you know, autumn flu, doesn't it? Who wants somebody's birthday cake piece showered with germs just before we enjoy it with ice cream? So St. Francis was 860 years old, running 861 on Friday. But his Liberation Day is today. Isn't that amazing? Birthdays and liberations are times when those great souls draw nearer to us, become more accessible to us. He was only 45 years old when he left his body. But he has some really wonderful wisdom to share with us. For example, all the darkness in the world cannot extinguish the light of a single candle. And second, the deeds you do today may be the only sermon some persons will hear today. Now, I promised you a triple header because yesterday was Mahatma Gandhi's birthday. And he is 152 years old. And he has this wisdom to share with us. When I despair, I remember that all through history, the way of truth and love have always won. There have been tyrants and murderers, and for a time they can seem invincible. But in the end, they always fail. Think of it. Always. Another piece of his wisdom, gained through his experience, is this. Live as if you were going to die tomorrow. But learn as if you were going to live forever. And the truth of the matter is that Vedanta teaches that we are eternal beings. And we say, well, it's too late for me to learn. I mean, why should I take that college course in anthropology that I've always wanted to do? I mean, I'm 96. Why not? Because what you learn in that anthropology course goes with you. You may return in the next life and be an anthropologist. Or do start those piano lessons. Or do begin working at hospice. Or do learn that next language if you haven't learned it yet. Or go back and restudy that French you had in high school if you want to. It's never too late to do anything. Finally, this beautiful one, be the change you wish to see in the world. You be it. Even if nobody else is being it, you be it. Because we have such tremendous influence, we don't realize how much influence we have. Finally, tomorrow is Saint Teresa of Avila's Liberation Day. 784 years ago, seems like yesterday. She was 67. And we all know that wonderful prayer of hers. It's so comforting. That was one of Mataji's two favorite prayers. St. Francis's peace prayer was one of them. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. St. Teresa's was, let nothing disturb you. Let nothing disturb you. Let nothing frighten you. All things pass. God alone never changes. Patience wins all. Just hanging in. The one who has God, the one who has the divine lacks for nothing. but God is our all in all. She also said, the closer we approach God, the simpler we become. And then a beautiful prayer that she gives to us today. May today there be peace within. May you trust God that you are exactly where you are meant to be. May you not forget the infinite possibilities that are born of trust. May you use those gifts which you have received and pass on the love which has been given to you. May you be content knowing you are a child of the divine. Let this presence settle into your very bones and allow your soul the freedom to sing, dance, praise, and love. It is there for each and every one of us. So thank you, St. Francesco from Italy, and Mahatma Gandhi from India, and St. Teresa of Avila from Spain. All these are universal figures who belong to all of us and are examples of what it is to live the life. Different cultures, different times, but still living the life. We find that although, we say Ramakrishna taught, the Vedas teach, that, there's one God, there's one divine being, and we call it by different names. Different religions, different individuals emphasize different aspects of the divine in their journey toward closeness to the divine. Ramakrishna said all religions are true. They're all valid because they all lead to one goal, and that's the divine. It isn't that all religions are the same, because obviously we know they're not. Rituals are different. Ideologies are different. Concepts are different. But the goal is always the one, always the divine. So that's what we're aiming at, is our realization and understanding that we are one in our quest to become more what we truly and essentially are, divine beings. It's 62 years ago tomorrow, another anniversary, is the dedication of this temple called Vishwa Mandir, Temple of the Universal Spirit. It's not meant to be a Hindu temple. It's meant to be a temple honoring what is universal, and that is the divine. Truth is one. People call it by different names. One light, one God, one Son, one truth. The truth with a capital T. We're not talking about theological truths, we're talking about the truth of being, of the one being. Shining brightly through all of these wonderful stained glass windows that represent all of the different major highways toward that one divine being. We look at the stone that comes from our grounds, the outside stone. We look at the wood that comes from our own felled oak trees from a hurricane. We look at the first stained glass window of its kind in the United States, of the Om. Look at the beautiful architecture of William Chin, the work done by Brother Richard and others to build this temple. It is a testament to the fact that all of us from different faith traditions, all of us on our own unique journey to the divine can sit together in peace and harmony, respecting one another's path, honoring the journey and the pilgrimage that we're each making, and honoring and affirming the efforts that we make to be a channel for divine grace and divine light and divine love. You know, Swami Paramananda talked often about living the life. We have so many opportunities to take more and more classes in terms of seminars about spirituality, read wonderful books that are available. I mean, more than we can even begin to digest, let alone read, mark, and learn. We can consume, we can become, as Trungpa Rinpoche said, spiritual materialists, in the sense of acquiring more and more and more in terms of aids to our spiritual unfoldment. But the important thing is that we actually take some of those principles and really think about them, the basic ones, think about them from every angle, and then apply them in our lives to whatever is going on at the time, whatever drama or lila that we're involved in at the time, with whatever cast of characters that we're involved in at that particular time, and apply them, even when it's uncomfortable to apply them, even when we'd rather not apply them, because it is living the life that's so important. It's not how much we know intellectually. That helps us. I mean, it gives us a direction and aspirational navigation system in a way. I have a role model. You know, I have a role model like St. Francis or St. Teresa of Avila or Jesus or Ramakrishna or Swami Vivekananda. I mean, there are wonderful role models of people who have what? Lived the life. They have lived their principles. And they've lived their principles in such a way, those particular ones, that become known far and wide for who they are. Not just because they're famous, but by who they are within themselves, of the transformative powers they've had on other people by living the life quietly, just going about their business, just fulfilling their mission. But how did they do it? In what way? How did they speak? How did they behave with other people? How did they make other people feel? And then there are so many others who are role models to individuals because they're not on a world stage, but they're just going about their business, living out those principles, manifesting those principles. And that's what it's all about, living the life. We can give so much service to humanity. Just simply not by our speech, but by our actions, by our bearing, by who we are. Wouldn't it be wonderful if instead of being fretful and anxious, we could feel ourselves filled with unshakable spirit? Wouldn't it be wonderful if instead of creating an atmosphere of unrest and anxiety, we would radiate peace and strength so that anyone who comes into our sphere feels soothed and sustained. You say, well, I'm no big person. I'm just an ordinary person. We're all ordinary people. Christ was an individual. The Buddha was an individual. Swami Vivekananda was an individual. Swami Paramananda was an individual. Mataji Gayatri Devi was an individual. The Dalai Lama is an individual. Mother Teresa was an individual. Desmond Tutu was an individual. And their followers were individuals. And what is the strength of the individual? It's not in a sense of self-importance, but in a very real sense of allowing ourselves to be an instrument of the divine and to be connected to the divine. That's where our strength and our wisdom comes from. This month, Swami Paramananda points our looking glass at right thought and right action. Because if our head's on straight, so will our actions be. If our thinking is distorted, our actions will be unskillful. Our choices will be skewed. Just logical, isn't it? That's why it's so important to meditate, actually, in whatever way we want to do it, and there are a million ways to do it. The point is doing it. Because meditation is like having a shower. If we don't build into our meditation session expectations, like this is how it's supposed to turn out, or this is what the result is supposed to be, then it can happen. We have to allow it and trust that something happens, that there's a process, that zillions of people in all these different traditions have practiced and found vital. So it gives us a shower. It moves the immovable. You know, Christ said if you have the trust, if you have the faith of a grain of mustard seed, and we all know how little that is, if you have just a iota of faith, of trust in the divine, in the process, then you can move mountains. You can say to this mountain that's in the middle of our consciousness, move, Buster, or Bustress. And it'll move, Christ says. That which is immovable in our own psyche can move. But we have such an amalgam and cement, that it's like concrete inside of us. Our old habits and our old perceptions and our old ways of being, some of which are not skillful anymore. We've outgrown them. And some of them are beneath our consciousness. We're not even aware that these are our habitual responses. We always respond this way because we always have responded this way, and it's worked for us. And we may not even be aware that this dynamic always happens because it may come from the past, way down deep in the past. So how do we shake that loose? How do we create some space so that some air and light can get down in there? Well, of course, therapy helps a lot. If you have an enlightened therapist. But in addition, for most of us, meditation works like erosion in a way. It's like laser. It's like light and unconditional love going into those compacted spaces and loosening them. And that's why so often in meditation, beginners just are euphoric about the whole thing. I meditate now. Yippee, it feels so good. I feel so good about myself. I'm really on the path. And then it becomes not so easy. I remember St. Teresa, I was just reading about her yesterday. She said the one time of the day she dreaded as a young nun was time for meditation. Like, let me out of here, I don't like this hour that I have to be there. Of course, she became one of the great masters of meditation in all the world. So in meditation, things start boiling up from the bottom, sort of churning up from the bottom, like when you go into a muddy river and it looks very, very clear on the surface, and then you go down below and you kind of churn up the bottom in some way, and all the detritus comes up to the top, and it's really cloudy and yucky looking. So yucky kind of stuff comes up in us. And we should go, either I'm creating this right now and this is not a good thing because I'm making the choice to be a jerk, or to respond unskillfully, let's say. Or the meditation is really working and it's bringing this hidden stuff up from the bottom for us to look at, to deal with in therapy, to deal with in prayer, to practice the opposite is always the antidote for some negative thing. And so, living the life. How wonderful to have examples, but also for ourselves, to take those principles and apply it in every circumstance. In our home, in our families, in our workplace, with our friends, in our political outlook, in our life together in community, community of town, community of state, community of nation, community of world. It's so true, I mean, with communication being as it is, television and satellites and all of that, I mean, how can we feel separate? I mean, we know what's happening in La Palma. We know what's happening in Nigeria. We know what's happening off Honduras. We know what's happening in every corner of the world. So we can no longer say, no, I'm only interested in what's happening here. Those other human beings, those other men, women, and children, they don't affect me. Why should I care about that? We can see how little the earth is, how small this beautiful planet is. And here are some, I don't know, I lose track of the billions, but is it almost 8 billion human beings on this earth now? So we're a tight family. What happens to some of us affects all of us. What happens in one part of the earth affects the rest of us. Just look at what will be coming to us after the volcano continues erupting in the Canary Islands. It's going to affect climate, it's going to affect transportation, it's already affecting communication, certainly affecting thousands of people who've lost their homes forever. So these are people that if we had them, invited them right to come right here and be with us, we would really like them. We would really care. I want to share with you the end of Ma's story. It's sort of been serialized because I didn't remember it, first of all, so Pat has reminded me about our experience on the 747 going to Europe. You remember that we had just gotten going, we had just taken off. Beautiful airplane, beautiful night, everything perfect. And we'd been flying for about a couple of minutes, and all of a sudden, the plane just started vibrating and shaking and rumbling and like that. And my heart stopped. And Mataji was just going through her purse, rearranging it. So what Pat reminded me about was I asked her, I said to her, Ma, when it was over, the pilot came on and he said, you know, ladies and gentlemen, no need to worry. The landing gear hadn't folded up properly, so we put it down again, and that's what made this huge vibration. But everything is fine. We put it back in, and we're all set to go. Everything's perfect. And I said to Ma, how could you just sit there and not be concerned at all? How can you not be anxious? And she just said, Ma, what is there to be anxious about? Well, I thought we were going down. I was a little anxious. And I was also a little anxious because I knew I had responsibility to Mataji and to all of her lovely devotees and followers and students to save her life if we plunged into the cold Atlantic Ocean. I mean, how floaty are those flotation cushions? You know, how does an 80-year-old woman slide down the slide? What is it like when we get into the dark ocean, you know? I have a responsibility. I was anxious. What is there to be anxious about, Ma? That was how she lived her life. What is there to be anxious about, Ma? Because her trust in the divine was absolute. And what we find is, you know, it isn't trust alone. It isn't just that we merely trust and do nothing. We have to manifest that trust. We have to use our heads, use our skills as we're directed. That's why right thoughts, right actions, and then the poem that Swamiji uses at the beginning is walk in the rhythm of life. You'll be hearing Joydev sing that in a minute. Do everything in the rhythm of life. Walk in the rhythm of life, talk in the rhythm of life, sing in the rhythm of life, dance in the rhythm of life. What does that mean? It means to be in harmony with the divine plan, the overall divine plan, and the plan that divine has for each and every one of us. So you see, we have to be receptive. We have to be able to hear. We have to be able to receive. What is the divine plan for us? And unfortunately, for most of us, you know, we don't get the 5-year plan. We get the next step. So when we ask, in all humility and in all unself-consciousness, what do I do now? Then we need to be receptive and listen. That's why Swami Paramananda talks so much about not having calculation. Not saying, okay, I'm going to figure out now, you know, all of this whole thing and all of its ramifications. That's okay to do, provided that we hand it upstairs and say, this is what I've come up with, now what's the plan? Guide me. Or maybe you just haven't a clue about what the next step should be. You're really in a ambivalent spot. Then the wisest thing is to ask. Say, I don't know what to do. How shall I handle this? What's the most immediate thing? Do I need to do something? Maybe it isn't mine to do it, or say it, or present it, or deal with it. And maybe it is. So you see, living the life, but in consonance, in harmony, in rhythm, so that we're going with the flow of life and with the evolution of all of us, of the universe, of every living being upon this, within this stream, not just upon this earth. The scope is much vaster than that. So we may feel little, but we're connected with something vast, but also something personal, something that is everything around us, but something that is conscious, something whose essence is considered by all those who know to be love, whose essence is considered by all those who know to be light and wisdom, not just impersonal. Christ said, "Do you believe I can do these things? Do you believe I can do these things? Have you faith?" And as I have said so often, I choose the word trust rather than faith, because I think faith is a more intellectual thing. The way we think about faith, we think of, well, I belong to this faith. I subscribe to these particular dogmas. I believe in this particular philosophy. But what we're talking about is not dogma, not belief. It is trust. Doubt can be, when it takes us over, can tear apart our fiber, can weaken our fiber. Doubt invites fear. Now, fear can be healthy sometimes. Warns us of imminent danger. But when we're on default position of fear and anxiety, that doesn't lend itself to our having wisdom and skillful actions. So that kind of doubt can be destructive to us. It invites fear. And fear and trust can't coexist. People so often ask, why do we pray? Wouldn't you think God knows everything that's going on? She does. She does. It does. But like trust is one of the most powerful constructive forces in life. Because what trust does is it opens a channel, a space in us and in the situation for divine blessing, for divine action to take place. We consciously become a conduit, not just for our own needs, but for others, for circumstances, for situations. I don't think anyone would disagree with the fact that we live in very challenging times. I mean, all kinds of things that are happening that are disturbing, to say the very least. So learning to have trust is huge. We have to learn to have trust in the divine. We have to learn to have trust in ourselves. And we have to learn to have trust in one another, too. In humanity. We can't give up on humanity and say it's hopeless. Mahatma Gandhi's quotation that I shared with you, whenever I feel despair, and he was using merely soul force, spiritual principles to overcome 400 years of colonization in his homeland. Not bombs, not violence, but respect, skillful means. Whenever I feel despair, I remember that truth and love always win out in the end. Always. So when we learn to have trust in the divine, when we learn to have trust in ourselves, and when we learn to have trust in one another, that the best in human beings will come out. The goodness, the kindness, the generosity, the wisdom. Is emerging, will emerge. And always to remember that in this world there are all different levels of spiritual evolution. All different levels of physical evolution. All different levels of psychological and emotional evolution. You know, we may be very advanced spiritually, but not psychologically or emotionally. We may be very advanced physically and emotionally and mentally, but not yet spiritually. We have different compartments, different departments, and they evolve separately until they can all be drawn together and unified. And so, remembering too that this is a school in which we're living. And we're all learning different lessons. We all have a different curriculum. It's an individualized curriculum. Boy, the teacher in charge of that has a handful with us. Remember that there are more men and women of goodwill in this world than men and women who haven't yet come to that. As Holy Mother used to say, if a person could do better, they would do better. If we could see how to be better, we would be better. We just haven't reached that place yet. That's why Mataji always prayed for the soul to guide each one from within. That's why one of my prayers is always to transform the hearts of terrorists. Domestic, foreign, wherever they are, those people that feel that terror is the way to go. To transform their consciousness. Martin Luther, who when he was a monk, a young monk, had a prayer, which is, we must work and watch, yet never be anxious, but commit all to Him, turn everything over to Him, and live in serene tranquility and a quiet heart. This doesn't mean merely trusting, merely turning everything over to the divine. This takes strength because it requires us also to act if we're called upon to act. How do you develop trust in the divine? There's just one really very easy way. And that is, it doesn't have anything to do, remember, with dogma or belief. It has to do with actually opportunities to trust in the divine. And then when you find out that that trust bears fruit for yourself through your own experience, then you have conviction. Then you know. And no one can tell you otherwise. I mean, you go through that stage, well, it's coincidence. That just happened by chance. Yes, I trusted in the divine for it, and everything worked out beyond anything I could have imagined, but it would have happened anyway. But you know, when you keep having that on the top of your consciousness, and you keep applying it, This relationship with the divine at the beginning of our relationship is like gimme, 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 like a Christmas list. We're always asking for something. And then we remember, oh yes, it's a good idea to be grateful and to thank the divine for all the many graces and benefits that I have in my life and in the life of others I know. And eventually it just becomes a mutuality, a partnership, where you wouldn't think of breathing without partnership with the One. And the neat thing is that, you know, we have this sense of relationship with the divine, and maybe coming through nature, beauty of nature, or the love of a baby, or any number of ways. The divine approaches us where we can be touched. The divine approaches us where he can get us, not in some other way. And then with the divine we feel, oh yes, this really feels like I feel really close to, I feel good, I feel close to the divine, this must be what it's like. Then we think, no, but St. Teresa, it happened to her, so mine must be lacking. We're just so busy trying to be busy, aren't we? To control, when this is the most natural thing in the world. It's a loving relationship. It's an intimate relationship. It's an easy relationship. It's a relationship that Sri Ramakrishna said, you take one step toward the divine and he takes 100 steps toward you. Or St. Francis said, the one that you're looking for is looking for you more. So how do you practice? How do you learn to trust the divine? Well, the next time you need something, or the next time a problem arises, you just talk it over with the divine. Honestly. From your own inadequacy. Be honest. I can't handle this. I don't want to handle this. I don't like it. But here it is. So, this is what I hope turns out. I don't know what's right. I don't know what's the highest good and greatest happiness for everyone involved. But you do. So I turn it over to you. Completely, with absolute trust. And I'll know you'll nudge me in the right direction for what I need to do. And you know it works every single time. I am convinced. I have conviction. Because I have experienced it over and over and over again. And I remind you, it works at intersections when you're trying to make a left-hand turn. Every single time. One of the most dangerous intersections anywhere around here is right here at Beechwood and 3A. And when you're coming from Hingham and making the left-hand turn here onto Beechwood, it can be awful because you can't see the inside lane. Unless you're in an SUV, and we're not. So you can't see over the cars when you're making the left-hand turn. So, when I remember it, coming down 3A, tootling down 3A, I said, Lord, please get us safely through that intersection. And by gum, the intersection is free and clear by the time we get there. So, dumb things like that, which are very important when you feel anxious about a dangerous intersection, or major things, or anything. The divine doesn't say that there's a litmus test of significance. The point is, it's the relationship you have, and the fact that we can depend upon the divine. So trust. And what's surrender? Turning it over. That doesn't mean that you're, excused from anything. You might be called upon to play a very major role in that. But you might not, but you'll be guided. So, Do you believe I can do these things? Asked the Christ. Have you faith? Have you trust? Because in every one of his healings, it was all about, do you trust? Do you have faith? It is your trust that healed you. It is your faith that healed you, that made you whole. Gandhi said, with them, faith is an effort of the intellect, not an experience of the soul. Intellect takes us along in the battle of life to a certain limit, but at the crucial moment, it fails us. Faith, trust, transcends reason. It is when the horizon is darkest and the human reason is beaten down to the ground that trust shines brightest and comes to our rescue. Sri Ramakrishna taught, the Lord is obtainable very easily through simple, childlike faith, trust. Trust is at the root of all spiritual progress. You can do without all other things, only you must have trust. Amen. Swaha.
Your feet unite with run. Oh, breathe the rhythm of life. Sing the rhythm of life. Talking the rhythm of life. Oh, walking the rhythm, talking the rhythm, dancing the rhythm of life. Oh, breathing the rhythm, thinking the rhythm.
Next Thursday evening, our meditation class, meditation and class on the Bhagavad Gita will be conducted by Brother Ashan. And next Sunday, we're celebrating Mataji Gayatri Devi's birthday, also Kalyani's birthday, also Kiran's birthday, but the major service about Mataji Gayatri Devi. So, please join us. I'll be speaking about her life and more of her teachings. And her actual birthday is Tuesday, October 12th. So their actual birthday is Tuesday, October 12th also. And guess what? Durga Puja is around the corner. So those of you who have so enjoyed being part of our public observance of the, all traditions have a fall, autumn festival. And in Bengal, the part of India that Mataji and Swami Paramananda and Swami Vivekananda and Holy Mother and Sri Ramakrishna come from is Bengal. And the fall celebration is called Durga Puja. And it's the time that the Divine Mother of the Universe, as the source of all abundance and all goodness and all the fruits of the earth, and all the wonderful qualities of goodness and kindness and generosity and light and love. We honor the Divine Mother at this time. So we're going to have it on Thursday at 7 o'clock, Thursday, October 14th. I'll remind you again next Sunday. And during the service, which Arya will be here also to film, we will have I'll speak about the Divine Mother, and also you'll have an opportunity to offer your boons. This is something that you need to think about if you're going to be with us, but you can ask it anyway from wherever you are, whatever you're doing. And that is that you could, as Christ said, ask and ye shall receive. And so one of the special parts of the worship of the Divine Mother is the ability to ask her any boon. So for yourself, for those you love, for the world, for all living beings, think of what you might like to ask of her as a boon. So we join together for our simple celebration of Durga Puja this year on Thursday, October 14th. So keep those dates in mind. Refreshments are going to be served. I imagine it's going to be outside because we're hardy New Englanders, but I don't know. If not, it'll be in the living room. It's not supposed to rain until later tonight. And from Daily Thoughts, from Swami Paramananda's poem, walk in the rhythm of life, your limbs will not tire. Sing with the rhythm of life, your voice will gain sweetness. Dance in the rhythm of life, your feet won't touch the ground. Breathe in rhythm, think in rhythm, talk in rhythm, sing in rhythm, dance in rhythm. Let rhythmic be your life, in rhythm with the divine plan. And right thought and right action. This is the state of dwelling in God. Being established in this knowledge, even at the end of life, you attain oneness with the Supreme. And today's message for October 3rd is your action must be vibrant. Your words must be sweet. And from the Bhagavad Gita, those who are devoted to me are dear to me. Those who are the same to friend and foe, and also in honor and dishonor, the same in heat and cold, pleasure and pain, they are dear to me. And the lesson, learn gentleness of speech, of step, gentleness in all your motions. Those who are in a higher state of evolution have great lightness in their touch, and in these movements, in all they do, there is lightness. The tendency to be destructive, to overturn and to break, indicates a wrong state of mind. When we move in perfect rhythm, we never destroy or hurt anything. Gentle manner and a sweet voice disarm all hatred and harshness. When we resist and assert ourselves, our action has no power other than to awaken a like spirit of resistance. Gentleness alone will overcome condemnation and anger. And the prayer, Lord, fill me with the spirit of loving kindness. May I never wound or injure any living thing. May self-interest never dominate my actions. Make me gentle and kindly. In all my dealings with my fellow beings. May God the Absolute, one without a second, the one in whom we live and move and have our being, the one God who is called by many names, Christ of the Christians, Allah of the Muslims, Hashem of the Jewish people, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, Buddha of the Buddhists, Shangdi of the Chinese, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, Brahman, the Divine Mother, the infinite and all-abiding Spirit of the Hindus. May you, who are our Mother, Father, Friend, Beloved, Companion, and Guide, grant unto us all peace and blessing. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and unto all living beings.